In a crowded courtroom, a scene unfolded that would soon capture the attention of the entire nation. A black woman, dressed in modest yet dignified attire, stood before a judge, her eyes fixed on the proceedings with a mix of curiosity and concern. Unbeknownst to her, she was about to become the central figure in a dramatic confrontation that would expose deep-seated racial biases and challenge the very fabric of justice. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense, with murmurs of discontent among the spectators. It was a typical day, filled with the usual array of cases, some mundane, others more serious. However, nothing could have prepared anyone for what was about to happen. A police officer, known for his aggressive demeanor and questionable conduct, entered the room. His presence was met with a mixture of fear and disdain from those who knew his reputation. As the officer approached the woman, his body language exuded arrogance and a sense of superiority. He seemed to embody the very essence of power abuse, his actions driven by a deep-seated prejudice that had been allowed to fester unchecked. Without provocation, he began to manhandle her, his actions swift and humiliating. The courtroom fell silent, with onlookers frozen in shock and horror. Despite the officer's aggressive behavior, the woman remained remarkably composed. Her eyes never left his face, a silent challenge to his authority and a testament to her inner strength. It was as if she knew something that no one else did, a secret that would soon turn the tables and change everything. The officer, however, was oblivious to the storm brewing around him. He continued to assert his dominance, unaware that his actions were being watched by more than just the courtroom spectators. The woman's calm demeanor hinted at a deeper story, one that would soon be revealed and shake the foundations of the justice system. As the confrontation escalated, whispers began to circulate among the onlookers. Some speculated about the woman's identity, wondering if she was more than just a random victim of the officer's abuse. Others discussed the officer's history of misconduct, questioning how he had managed to remain in his position despite numerous complaints. The air was thick with tension, and it seemed only a matter of time before the situation would reach a boiling point. Little did anyone know, the true drama was only just beginning. The woman's response to the officer's actions would not only change her life, but also have far-reaching consequences for the entire community. As the officer continued to manhandle the woman, his actions became increasingly aggressive. The courtroom spectators watched in horror, some trying to intervene while others were too stunned to react. The woman, however, remained steadfast, her eyes locked on the officer with a mixture of defiance and calmness that seemed almost surreal given the circumstances. Just as it seemed like the situation couldn't escalate further, the woman's demeanor suddenly shifted. With a subtle smile, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small folder. The officer, still unaware of the gravity of his mistake, sneered at her, expecting her to produce some form of identification or perhaps a futile attempt to defend herself. Instead, the woman opened the folder, revealing a series of documents and photographs that seemed to freeze time in the courtroom. The officer's expression changed from arrogance to confusion, and then to outright panic as he realized who she truly was. The woman was not just any ordinary citizen. She was a high-ranking official in the legal system, someone with the power to bring about justice and accountability. The courtroom erupted into chaos as the truth began to unravel. The officer's misconduct, which had been hidden for so long, was finally exposed. The woman's calm demeanor turned into a powerful voice, demanding justice not just for herself but for all those who had suffered at the hands of this officer. As the officer's career began to crumble, The woman's words echoed through the courtroom, a call to action against systemic racism and abuse of power. The scene was set for a dramatic showdown, one that would change the lives of everyone involved and spark a broader conversation about justice and equality. The courtroom proceedings quickly turned into a dramatic showdown as the woman's true identity was revealed. She was not just a victim of the officer's abuse. She was a respected judge known for her fairness and integrity. The officer's eyes widened in shock as he realized the gravity of his mistake. The documents she had produced were evidence of his long history of misconduct, including complaints from numerous citizens and internal warnings from his superiors. As the judge began to speak, her voice was firm but controlled, detailing the officer's pattern of behavior and the systemic failures that had allowed him to continue serving despite his actions. The courtroom was silent, with all eyes on the unfolding drama. The officer's face turned pale, his arrogance replaced by fear and desperation. The judge's words were not just a personal rebuke, they were a call to action for the entire justice system. She highlighted the need for accountability and reform, emphasizing that no one should be above the law. The officer's actions were not just a personal failing but a symptom of a broader problem that needed to be addressed. As the judge concluded her remarks, the courtroom erupted into a flurry of activity. The officer was immediately taken into custody, pending an investigation into his conduct. The media, which had been quietly observing the scene, sprang into action, capturing every moment for the evening news. The story quickly spread like wildfire, with social media platforms filled with outrage and calls for justice. The officer's career was effectively over, but the real impact was only just beginning. The incident sparked a national conversation about police accountability and systemic racism, with many calling for reforms to prevent such abuses of power in the future. The judge's actions had not only brought justice to the officer but had also ignited a movement. Her courage and integrity had shown that even in the face of adversity, standing up for what is right can lead to profound change. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the impact of that moment in the courtroom continued to resonate, inspiring others to fight for justice and equality. As the news of the officer's misconduct and subsequent arrest spread, the public reaction was swift and intense. Social media platforms were flooded with comments, hashtags, and videos, all calling for justice and accountability. The officer's name became synonymous with abuse of power, and his face was plastered on news channels and front pages of newspapers. The media coverage was relentless, with journalists digging deeper into the officer's past, uncovering a trail of complaints and warnings that had been ignored or swept under the rug. The police department, faced with mounting pressure, launched an internal investigation, promising to root out any systemic issues that had allowed such behavior to persist. The officer's career was effectively over, but the real challenge was just beginning. The community demanded more than just the officer's resignation. They wanted systemic change. The judge's courageous stand had ignited a movement, with protests and rallies organized across the city, all calling for police reform and greater accountability. As the officer faced the consequences of his actions, the judge became a symbol of hope and resilience. Her bravery in standing up to injustice inspired countless others to share their own stories of abuse and mistreatment. The incident had exposed a deep-seated problem, but it also highlighted the power of individual actions to bring about change. The officer's downfall was not just a personal failure. It was a turning point for the entire justice system. It marked a shift towards greater transparency and accountability, with the community demanding that those in power be held to the same standards as everyone else. The story of the officer and the judge would be remembered for years to come, a reminder of the importance of standing up against injustice and fighting for what is right. In the end, the officer's career was ruined, but something much more significant was born. A movement for justice and equality that would continue to grow and inspire others long after the headlines had faded. The judge's actions had shown that even in the darkest moments, there is always the potential for change and redemption, and that sometimes all it takes is one courageous stand to spark a revolution. The officer's career was over, but the impact of the incident continued to resonate. The judge's bravery had sparked a national conversation about police accountability and systemic racism. As reforms began to take shape, the community celebrated a hard-won victory. The judge's actions had not only brought justice to the officer but had also inspired a movement, proving that standing up against injustice can lead to profound change. The aftermath of the courtroom incident marked the beginning of a broader movement for justice and accountability. The judge's actions had not only exposed one officer's misconduct, but had also shone a light on systemic issues within law enforcement and the justice system as a whole. Across the country, communities began to rally around the need for meaningful reform, inspired by her courage and determination. In the weeks that followed, public officials, activists, and community leaders came together to address the root causes of police misconduct. Town hall meetings were held, where citizens shared their stories of injustice and demanded change. The judge herself became a prominent figure in these discussions, using her platform to advocate for reforms that would ensure accountability and fairness in law enforcement practices. National media continued to follow the story, amplifying calls for change. Investigative reports uncovered patterns of abuse and negligence in various police departments, further fueling public outrage. Policymakers were forced to respond, introducing legislation aimed at increasing transparency, implementing stricter oversight mechanisms, and mandating cultural sensitivity training for officers. The judge's efforts extended beyond advocacy. She collaborated with legal experts, civil rights organizations, and law enforcement officials to draft comprehensive reform proposals. These included measures such as independent review boards for police misconduct cases, body camera mandates, and improved training programs focused on de-escalation techniques and bias awareness. Despite resistance from some quarters, including powerful police unions and political figures who opposed reform efforts, the momentum for change was unstoppable. Social media campaigns kept the issue in the spotlight, while grassroots movements worked tirelessly to hold local governments accountable. The judge became a symbol of hope and resilience, her story inspiring countless others to take action in their own communities. As reforms began to take shape, their impact was felt across the nation. Police departments started adopting new policies aimed at rebuilding trust with the communities they served. Public confidence in law enforcement slowly began to improve as instances of misconduct were met with swift and decisive action. The judge's journey was far from over. She continued to work tirelessly to ensure that the changes being implemented were not just symbolic but truly transformative. Her story became a testament to the power of individual action in driving systemic change, proving that even in the face of adversity, it is possible to challenge injustice and create a better future for all. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more stories like this, be sure to subscribe and follow us.